Brexit, EU leaders pave way for future trade talks. EU leaders have agreed to start preparing for trade talks with the UK, as Theresa May admits there is some way to go in negotiations. As expected, her 27 EU counterparts agreed at a Brussels summit that not enough progress had been made on other issues to begin formal trade talks now. But by starting internal talks, they are paving the way for them to begin, possibly in December. Mrs May declined to say what the UK would be prepared to pay to leave. The so-called divorce bill is a major sticking point in talks with the EU, and Mrs May would only say that she had already given a firm commitment on Britain's financial obligations. She said the final settlement would come as part of a final agreement with the EU. The Prime Minister did not name any numbers but refused to deny that she had told other EU leaders the UK could pay many more billions than the £20 billion she had indicated in her Florence speech last month, which was aimed at breaking the Brexit talks deadlock. "I have said that nobody need be concerned for the current budget plan, that they would have to either pay in more or receive less as a result of the UK leaving, and that we will honour the commitments that we have made during our membership." But she said those commitments were being analysed line by line, adding, "British taxpayer wouldn't expect its government to do anything else." She said the two sides were within touching distance of a deal on other issues, particularly on citizens' rights. "I'm positive and optimistic about where we can get to in relation to the future partnership that we want with the European Union, because it's not only in the interests of the British people, it's in the interest of people across the remaining 27 members of the European Union as well." She added, "I am ambitious and positive for Britain's future and for these negotiations, but I know we still have some way to go." Analysis. It is not what the original UK government plan was, that this autumn the EU would get on with working out the big picture. But it means that Theresa May does not go home empty-handed. At her press conference this morning she was able to hail progress. But by agreeing to talk about talks, this tricky process has only moved forward a couple of inches in a journey of many miles. And there are still big questions. How much are we willing to pay? How closely aligned do we want to be with the EU in the future? How will the Conservative Party and the Cabinet manage to get to a common place on their ambitions for Brexit when there are such internal divisions? The other 27 EU leaders have been assessing the progress made so far in Brexit negotiations with the UK, which is due to leave the EU in March 2019, following last year's referendum result. They have officially concluded that insufficient progress has been made in negotiations over citizens' rights, the UK's financial obligation and the border in Northern Ireland to allow them to move on to the second phase of talks with the UK dealing with trade discussions, after a discussion lasting just 90 seconds. But European Council President Donald Tusk said they had given the green light to preparations for the second phase of Brexit talks, dealing with trade. The Prime Minister made a personal appeal to her EU counterparts at a working dinner last night, telling them that we must work together to get to an outcome that we can stand behind and defend to our people. BBC Europe editor Katja Adler said all EU leaders knew Mrs May was in a politically difficult situation and did not want her to go home empty-handed, so had promised they would start talking about trade and transition deals among themselves, as early as Monday. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said there were encouraging signs of progress in Brexit negotiations and suggested formal trade talks could begin in December, when EU leaders are next scheduled to meet. She said the process was progressing step by step despite British media reports that negotiations were not advancing. "I have absolutely no doubt that if we are all focused, and the speech in Florence made a contribution towards that, we can achieve a good result," she said. "From my side there are no indications at all that we won't succeed."